Welcome to Three Thoughts Zone. Today I have as a guest Marcus Kneissl. Marcus, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. How are you, Rafael?
I am doing well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being my guest on my podcast. Just for the audience, Marcus and I met through LinkedIn. I saw his story on LinkedIn and I thought it was fascinating. So I reached out and he responded, and here we are. So thank you for making the time. Before we get into what you do for a living, why don't you take a couple of minutes and tell the audience who you are and what was your journey from when you started to where you are today in your life?
So where do we begin? No, I was born and raised in South Germany. I grew up close to the Alps, and the first picture of me and my dad hiking, I think I was 3 years old. And so my dad was always my hero. He was a sportsman all of his life and still is at age 76. So he's my role model. And he challenged me always. And he always left me open with everything I wanted to explore in terms of sports. And yeah, so that's my childhood. And I ended up not in sports because I thought it's nothing sustainable or something I could earn good money with. So I studied business and went down the corporate path, first as a consultant in the automotive industry and then as a project manager. I worked for brands like Porsche and Audi and BMW, like all the big ones in Germany. But I also, like you said before, that you were traveling quite a lot, like 200,000 miles a year. And I was driving 70, 80,000 kilometers a year. So that was most time on the road for a couple of years. And also like fast-paced lifestyle. Automotive industry is high pressure, especially in the logistics where I worked. And yeah, I burned out in 2015, but we can get into that later if you want. But it's a multi-layered experience. So if people always think it's about work and pressure and all of that, it hasn't been for me. It was more like the entire construct of how I designed my life around my career, and not really fully focused on other stuff like friends or building a family or settling down. I always wanted that, but never really got into it. It just didn't happen. So at some point, it didn't really feel aligned, and that caused me a lot of stress, apart from the stress at work. So I think it layered one on the other. I was always sporty, as I said, but I drank way too much. I smoked way too much. What people would consider a normal diet, that's what I ate, but it wasn't like what I know from like my past 10-year experience. It was definitely anything other than healthy. So yeah. And then a good friend of mine, he asked me during that really heavy time for me if I wanted to go with him on a surf trip to Sri Lanka. And I never went surfing before, so I think that's a good idea, so let's do this. I think it was 10 days, end of 2015. And the surfing was cool, but they also offered yoga classes. They were in the evening on the rooftop, and I was like, it was already magical, but and the practice itself was quite challenging because I was super stiff, anything other than flexible, and I squeezed myself into those poses. But somehow it worked. And then the magic happened in the end pose in Shavasana, when like I lay down, and that was the first time for a really long time that my mind went still, and I didn't have any thoughts. I just was like in the present moment, and that was so fascinating for me that I kept on doing it. And I think that was the time when something also shifted, because then I started trying to live healthier. I did more yoga. I think 3 months after, I quit smoking cold turkey after 20 years, smoking a pack a day. 1 month later, so 4 months later after the yoga thing, I quit my job. And yeah, also like from one day to the other, I just walked into my boss's office and said, that's it, I'm done. And I had a 6 months leave, so there was a lot of preparation time. And I prepared for a 1 year trip around the globe. So I was planning for a backpacking trip, and I did that. So I bought just a one-way ticket to Bangkok, and that's where I started. And then I tried it, just living from moment to moment, exploring all my interests. And yoga was like one constant throughout this entire year. And afterward, when I returned, I met also my girlfriend, who's still my partner in Mexico, coincidentally. Another story. We're still together, and we also do this business together. Yeah, and I went into the yoga space. So I did a yoga teacher training afterward, mostly because of my own injuries. And I thought it was a good idea to cure myself, to heal myself. But I didn't know what it requires to do that, because I thought just yoga is a good starting point. And then, as you also described, you go from one thing to the other. So you discover one thing. So the entry point for me was more the physical. But then I discovered meditation. I discovered the entire mindset work. I discovered Dr. Joe Dispenza by that time. So I tried that, used his program from his book to craft my own practice, and I think I did a lot of that work to reprogram my habits and my entire lifestyle. And then I just was so fascinated with all that work, and the body work and the anatomy and yoga, the mindfulness, that reprogramming of the mind in an intentional way, that I told people about it. And one of my best friends back then, he was a businessman, wanted to sell his business, but was suffering from burnout for almost 20 years back then, deep in depression. And when he told me, that sounds fascinating what you tell me. So, okay. And I said, okay, so you can come anytime, and I'm pretty sure I can help you somehow. I had no clue how, but I was confident that I could. But I let it open. So just, I think six weeks later, he came to me and said, so there's this thing I haven't told anyone so far. I want to sell my business because it's eating me up alive. And I need energy for that. And I don't have that energy right now. And what you told me sounds like something that could help me get this energy I want. And so we started working. And I just invented stuff, meditations, used the breathwork protocols I knew. We did yoga, we did the mindset work, and all that different stuff a lot of reframing his thought patterns just intuitively. And yeah, that was the starting point of the energy. Not at the energy lab, because that became like the branding, like almost, I think 5-6 years later. But it was the starting point that got me into all of that.
So in essence, he was almost like your first client. Is that safe to say? He was maybe like your first customer.
Yeah, it was safe to say. I always tell the story. Like, of course, since he was my best friend and he was my first customer or client, I didn't charge him anything afterwards. Of course, I regretted it because it was a lot of work. And I asked him, so what do you think how much was that worth? And he said, yeah, maybe 10,000 euro. And it was a 4-month thing that we did. And I was like, 10,000 euros, so I could have charged that.
And he would have happily paid it too, right?
That's what he said. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's a great story. So I wanna dive into a number of the things that you mentioned there, because, like, we discussed before we started recording, you and I seem to have a very similar story. Um, so I want to kind of draw the parallels and see how was the experience for you, because I know how was the experience for me, and I also talk to people, all the time, and I hear their stories of how they went from living a particular type of life and then deciding to make a dramatic change or a shift into what they're doing, right? So for me, it was my health. I wasn't healthy. I was traveling too much. When you travel for business, you don't eat well. You can eat well, but it's just hard to eat well. And when
Yeah.
I was in business, the world is changed too. Today you can walk into a meeting and you can tell your customers, depending on where in the world you are, that you don't drink or that you don't eat these things, and it's okay. That wasn't the case when I was in business in the 90s, in the early 2000s. If you said these, oh, I don't drink, or immediately that creates a little bit of a wall or a little bit of a disconnect between you and the people you're trying to do business with, right? So I'm not gonna say that I was forced. I like to eat and I like to drink, but if I wanted to stop, it would have been challenging, right? Not impossible, but challenging. So for me, my health took a toll, and I decided that I needed to make a change. And that change was very gradual. It took me years to actually make that change. For you, when you said that you had that you felt like you were burning out or you were burnt out, can you expand a little bit on that? Like, what did it feel like to you? What did you become aware of that led you to say, I'm burnt out and I have to make a change?
I think I can safely say that I wasn't even aware that I was burned out. That was more like a later realization, because I was always telling I was almost burned out because I didn't have that complete crash that other people were talking about. So that they were completely depleted of their energy and couldn't do anything. And that wasn't the case for me. And a friend, also coach, he later said on one of my LinkedIn posts, so when I also said I almost burned out, he said, no, you didn't almost burn out. You were completely burned out, but you were still functioning. And that brought the realization. So just for the experience, or like, how would I describe that? There was more, I think the last 6 to 9 months before that yoga experience was that I almost had like every second night a sleepless night. So it was more like I tried to fall asleep. I didn't. Was a lot of monkey mind stuff. So always ruminating on thoughts. Then it got worse after some time, and I had real panic attacks during the night alone in my bed, and that really felt heavy. So I was afraid to die in those moments, and at the same time I was afraid of death, like really hard, and that, yeah, those nights, of course, didn't sleep enough. So the next day was crappy. Tried to get through that with coffee, with cigarettes, making it through the day. I still managed, exactly. I still managed to do some sport. Like I went running, I went mountain biking, I did some bodyweight stuff at home. But then in the evening, I just crashed on the couch. I slept in at, I think, 8 o'clock or so, watching a movie. I woke up at 12 midnight, and then I was awake for the entire night again. So that was the case for like 6 months or so. And then I had some good weeks. I think traveling was always okay for me. I traveled a lot, but then I was more with people, and I drank. Also, alcohol was a topic. So I had those, yeah, good sleep nights, but you never sleep good when you drink too much because it's a light sleep, and it's never like really a restful sleep. That's the other thing.
Yeah, it's not good quality sleep.
Not at all. And yeah, so I barely made it through the days, and that was not a realization. It was just like living from day to day. I think that I have no idea how much longer I could have sustained that if not that friend of mine would have asked me to go on this surf trip with him. No idea.
Well, so that's a good point. I mean, for you had I guess the good fortune that number one you were invited to this trip, and number two you said yes, right? Because
Yeah.
you could have said no and carried on. I'm too busy. I can't do that. And it reminds me of I had the opportunity to do some volunteer work for Deepak Chopra when he was here in Lake Nona, and one time we were in a group setting having a conversation, and he was telling a story about how an executive asked him about meditation, and Deepak said, you should try to meditate 10 minutes a day, every day. And the person told him, 10 minutes a day, I don't have time for 10 minutes a day. And he said, oh, you don't have time for 10 minutes a day? Then you need 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Because if your mind is in that space that I don't have 10 minutes, then you need even more work, right? And that kind of leads to the other half of what you were talking about the yoga and the mindset, and what I'm gonna call, I don't call it this. This is how neuroscience calls it, the reframing aspect of changing the way you think, right? Changing your beliefs, changing the way you feel intentionally so that your quality of life can improve, right? So you went through that process where, thanks to the yoga that you experienced in Sri Lanka, you came back with a different outlook, a different lens through which you can see your life. But then you actually became intentional about it, right? It wasn't just, you went there and then you came back and you went right back to what you were doing. The situation, the experience was so powerful for you that you felt like you needed to make some changes. But those changes require a change in how you think about your well-being, right? So tell us a little bit more about that, and how did, breath work, meditation, yoga, and all these things, along with some of the work that Joe Dispenza does, how did that help you create that reframing that I'm talking about?
First of all, I just want to tap into something you said right there. I think that also what we do now, organize retreats and stuff. So I think that exactly this getting out of your not comfort zone, but of your usual environment, that's key for change. I think that's where it all starts. Because then you're already out of your usual thought patterns, your usual routines, your usual habits, and that already can create that shift that you need. And also for what made that experience, I think, so powerful is that I didn't need more by that time, I needed less. And that's what you said. I mean, that's exactly that. If you don't have 10 minutes to meditate, then you need 20. That's it. You don't need more, you need less. So you need to take the time for yourself to listen, to breathe, to come back to yourself. And I think
You need less of all that stuff that's happening out there, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
the noise.
Correct.
So you need to cut through the noise to hear the signal, or you
That's
need to
correct.
calm the noise to hear the signal. I think that that's exactly what happened. Also, then through yoga, the yoga teacher training, I did that in Rishikesh, India. So I went to the source of Hatha yoga because I was interested in learning from the very basics. And I also felt that always that the yoga wasn't enough, so it gave me a good starting point and a good framework, and it wasn't. I think it wasn't even Joe Dispenza, which was with which I started. I think I started with Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. So that was the first thing that introduced me more in this mindset and. How you create from your mind, and that the mind is always the operating center. Nowadays, I have a little bit of a different perspective on that. But yoga introduced me to this unity concept that body and mind are one, and also like that the emotions live in the body. So you whatever you experience in your life, you embody that. And it's always your mind is programmed by your entire experience, depends on your culture, depending on your upbringing, depending on teachers, friends, whatever your life experience was, that programs your mind. And what you said about the belief, a lot of people talk about the negative beliefs or the false beliefs or whatever beliefs. But it's all of your beliefs that shape your filter of how you view life. And I realized that not long ago, that it's basically not only the negative beliefs, it's all your beliefs that shape your perspective on life, your outlook on life, how you perceive everything that happens to you or for you. So all those little shifts that happen is one step further into developing yourself into the person you want to become. And that's the most difficult part. And that's basically what the breaking the habit of being yourself, the groundwork of what I found from Dr. Joe Dispenza is. You first need to create that vision of who you want to become, because before that you were just living on autopilot. Usually, the upbringing, you were raised for a certain kind of career, you went to school, university, and not only because your parents wanted that, also you wanted that because society told you that it's the right thing to do. So you're buying into that stuff and become like the little soldier of corporate Germany or corporate America or whatever. And then, when you realize that it's not the realization in the beginning, you just feel that there is something off, and it's not really matching up to who I am or who I want to be. And then you start questioning, and that's where I started. I started questioning everything. I started questioning everything I believed in, everything my parents told me, school told me, society told me. So I was researching and getting always to the source of things, like to the source of basically everything. Also about nutrition. So in Germany, just a little example, in Germany, it's there's this belief that milk is good for you. And it's basically propaganda of like the milk industry of the 50s and 60s, because they had an overproduction of milk. So they just wanted to sell more, and then they invented this fascinating story that it's about the calcium, and that it's good for you and you need that, and drink at least like half a liter a day. And then I became, I think 2010 or so, I became lactose intolerant, and I still drank milk. But I took pills for that, just to get accustomed to the lactose that was missing, so the enzyme. And then you question things, and you start questioning even more, and then you start reframing how you think, how you want to live, who you want to become, and what that life could look like that you actually want to live. And for me, that started with health, because it's I think that's where we felt when we talked before, that this is the most aligned part, I think, because it's the foundation of everything. And going to the gym 3 times a week and having strength and mobility are 2 different things. Like movement and going to the gym 3 times a week just to train whatever, bodybuild or for nonsense, depends on your training style, it's completely different. So how you do things, it's not only what you do, it's also how you do. And mindfulness is what I discovered during that yoga thing, is where you get to that point that you even dive deeper into the how you do things. You get more intentional, you get more into the quality side of everything. You listen inside, you listen how that feels. It's more about becoming or understanding yourself. I think that's the essence.